Day of the Presidents. What fun. Whatever, we'll do it, we'll get it over with, and move on to something way more interesting. Okay. 1789. President George Washington is unanimously elected as the first president of the United States. But wait. His teeth weren't made of wood, they were made of hippo ivory, lead, and other animal teeth? That's disgusting. President number 2 was John Adams, who had a dog named Satan? So next was Thomas Jefferson, who spoke 6 languages fluently. Because apparently writing the Declaration of Independence wasn't enough for him. Okay. Maybe this isn't so bad. But how else can I learn about the presidents without reading this boring book? Wait, I have those DVDs. Where did I put them? Here we go. Okay. James Madison was the shortest president at 5'4", which is still 4 3/8 inches taller than I am. Then there's James Monroe, who chased his Secretary of State out of the White House with fireplace on. Then we have our 6th president, John Quincy Adams, who used to go skinny dipping in the Potomac, which is way too much information, and now let's move on. Let's try the internet. There's tons of weird information on the internet. Let's see, what do we got? Andrew Jackson had a pet parrot that he taught to curse, and then the parrot wouldn't stop cursing at Jackson's funeral. Oh, and this is really, really cool. Martin Van Buren's nickname was Old Kinderhook, so when he approved documents, he would initial them, OK. And that's where we got the word from. And then after him was William Henry Harrison, who gave the longest inauguration speech ever, at 1 hour and 40 minutes long, in the snow. And then he died 31 days later of pneumonia. John Fuller became the next president, and between his 2 wives, he had a total of 15 children. The youngest was born when he was 70. Then there was James Taylor, who was the only president to voluntarily serve 1 term. After him came Zachary Taylor, who allowed his horse to graze on the White House lawn. I wonder if there are any TV specials on the president. That would be cool. So Millard Fillmore was the first president to have a stepmother, which is kind of cool, I guess. Then we have Franklin Pierce, who was arrested during his first year as president for running over an old lady with his horse. And they still let him be president? Okay. In 1857, we come to President James Buchanan, who was the only U.S. president to never marry, though he did spend a lot of time with Alabama Senator William King. Oh, look, it's famous Abe Lincoln. You, Mr. Lincoln, were the first president to be photographed at your inauguration, and in that photo, you were standing near John Wilkes Booth. Oh, the irony. After killing Lincoln, Vice President Andrew Johnson was inaugurated, although he was noticeably drunk during his inauguration. After Johnson came Ulysses S. Grant, who, oh look, we're back to the horses! He was fined $20 for speeding on his horse. Why am I sitting here learning about the presidents when I can go into Washington, D.C. and learn about them in real life? I'm going to go to the National Portrait Gallery. Oh. So, Rutherford B. Hayes was the first president to host the famous Easter egg roll on the White House lawn. Then, in 1881, we had James Garfield, who was the first president to talk on the phone, to Alexander Graham Bell himself, because he was the president, so he could do that. Chester Arthur became president, and he owned 80 different pairs of pants. The man really liked his pants. Wait, isn't the White House right down the road from here? I'm going to go visit the White House. So, our 22nd president, Grover Cleveland, was a hangman while he was sheriff for Erie County in New York. Then there was Benjamin Harrison, who had 2 pet possums named Mr. Reciprocity and Mr. Protection. Such difference would I would name my pet possums if I had one. And who should be our next president? Why, look, it's our good friend Grover Cleveland, the only president president to serve 2 non-consecutive terms, which means that he had to campaign twice, which must have been really interesting considering campaign buttons weren't really popular until William McKinley became president. And William McKinley, he was also the first president to campaign using the telephone. Theodore Roosevelt became president when McKinley died, and he threw a Swiss ambassador to the ground during a judo demonstration. Yeah. Then there was William Howard Taft, who installed a larger bathtub in the White House after getting stuck in the original one. After Taft came the 28th president, Woodrow Wilson. Wilson was really creative, and he painted his golf balls black so he could play in the winter. Warren G. Harding was after him, and he was a really big gambler, so big that he lost a priceless set of White House china in a poker game. But finding out all this information, it's kind of like putting together a puzzle of the men who ran our country. In fact, Calvin Coolidge is the only president to have been born on the 4th of July, but interestingly, John Adams, Thomas Jefferson, and James Monroe all died on the 4th. And Herbert Hoover created his own sport called Hoover Ball to try to stay in shape while he was in office. Then there was Franklin D. Roosevelt, and he was subjected to an attempted assassination. But rather than hitting FDR, the assassin hit 5 other people. Not the best assassin. After him was Harry S. Truman, whose middle name was just S. It didn't stand for anything. And thinking about it, Truman and Roosevelt would have been the first presidents to fly on Air Force One, which is something that our presidents now use all the time. But Dwight D. Eisenhower probably would have been really familiar with planes, given he was the only president to serve in both World War I and World War II. And contrary to popular belief that Truman was the first to pardon a Thanksgiving turkey, John F. Kennedy was in fact the first president to grant such a pardon. Lyndon B. Johnson came next, and he gave out the first Medicare card to none other than Harry Truman. But looking back at all this history, you begin to realize that history is happening all around us, all the time. All we have to do is open a newspaper. Like, when Richard Nixon made big news during the Watergate scandal, what wasn't in those articles was the fact that his favorite snack was cottage cheese and ketchup. And before Gerald Ford became president, he had once been a male model for Cosmopolitan magazine. Then there's Jimmy Carter, who published a children's book entitled The Little Baby Snooglefleeker. I don't know what a snooglefleeker is, but apparently Jimmy Carter knows what a snooglefleeker is. After him was Ronald Reagan, our actor president, who almost took a role in Back to the Future, which would have been really interesting to see. George H.W. Bush almost chose Clint Eastwood to be his running mate, but then thought better of it, which was probably a good decision on his part. But no matter who our president is, they're just trying to leave their mark on history and make it into the history books. But as we've seen, so much information about the presidents doesn't end up in the history books. Like how Bill Clinton's cat almost had a Super Nintendo game created around it. And how George Bush's past as a cheerleader, that's not going to end up in the history books. But that's the end of my book. But history is not done, because Barack Obama is our 44th president, and he's still making history every day. But hopefully his actions as president won't have him use his $50,000 insurance policy that's in place in case he's attacked by an Australian crocodile. Australian crocodile. And now I'm done. That wasn't so bad. I think I'll go learn some more.